This will help you grow big and strong. My loving in-laws, adoring their newly born grandchild, keep buying and bringing various things over. Today, my mother-in-law brought some baby food. However, considering I've just given birth, baby food seems a bit premature. They must really love their grandchild. Don't you think it's a bit too early? 4 or 5 months will fly by. Don't worry, it's in a sealed pack and has a long shelf life. I bought it online, it's really popular, and I was worried it might sell out when we need it. Thank you as always. Now, I'll be heading to my parents' house. I was just about to leave for my parents' house. When my mother-in-law arrived just as I was getting into the car, I decided not to go back inside the house and simply packed the baby food into my bag. Welcome back. I'll stay here for a bit and relax. I planned to stay overnight at my parents' house. The next day, when I casually showed the baby food from my mother-in-law to my mom, she exclaimed loudly, "This is from my mother-in-law. Baby food already, can you believe it? Throw this away right now." The baby food she pointed at had slightly changed color. My mother-in-law is usually very kind, but there was an incident not long ago that made me a bit suspicious. Seeing the discolored baby food, my suspicion grew. It seems like my mother-in-law might be targeting me. I resigned from my job at 28 when I got married. I could have continued working just for the sake of marriage, but I was already pregnant. Having wanted a child, I decided to quit my job to focus on raising my baby. However, I do want to work again, so once child-rearing settles down, I plan to look for a job. Since I'm 28 years old, I'll probably resume working after I'm over 30. At 30, I should still have opportunities for re-employment, right? Besides, I've saved up considering marriage and childbirth, and my husband, Jonathan, has been stable in his job for 10 years. So, even though the baby was a bit unplanned, scaling down the wedding and skipping the honeymoon made it seem manageable to quit my job for a while. I'm willing to make these sacrifices for my child. Jonathan understood my decision and supported me quitting my job. Getting married and pregnant simultaneously, I felt very happy starting a new life with my understanding husband. We were worried about how our parents and in-laws would react to our shotgun wedding, but they were happy when we announced it. My worrisome mom, Emily, was relieved to hear about the marriage, having feared I might never get married. "I'm glad you got married before 30. I was worried you might never find someone." Despite knowing about Jonathan, why was she so worried? Maybe I'll understand her feelings once I have my child. Linda and George, my in-laws, also responded well, being happy about our marriage and pregnancy. "Jonathan, it looks like you've married a wonderful person. Make sure to take good care of your wife and child. I'm going to be a grandpa. Let me know whatever you need. A crib? Clothes? Diapers?" "Dad, you're getting ahead of yourself." My in-laws were overjoyed about their first grandchild. Especially George, who, with his generous nature, was eager to buy everything. Linda happily watched on as George enthusiastically planned for the grandchild. I find their slightly old-fashioned relationship as a couple quite endearing. "Hello, how are you feeling? I know it must be hard to do housework with your growing belly. I've made some side dishes for you, have them for dinner tonight." "Linda, thank you so much. I really appreciate it." Our house is about a 40-minute drive from my in-laws. Despite the distance, my mother-in-law often checks on me and brings over homemade dishes. I've heard many people struggle with mother-in-law issues, but that seems foreign to me. At least, that's what I thought at the time. "Hey, are you okay? You seem to be having a hard time again." "I'm fine, just leave me alone for a bit, will you?" Lately, I've been unable to sleep well and get irritated over trivial things. As a result, I've been cold to my husband more often. It's probably because of the pregnancy, right? He seems to think so too and doesn't complain, treating me kindly even when I'm cold. But I can't rely on his kindness forever, so I discussed my insomnia and irritability with the doctor during a checkup. After the examination, they told me my insomnia was due to too much caffeine, and my irritability was a result of the lack of sleep. That can't be right. Caffeine can negatively affect fetal development and, in large amounts, may increase the risk of miscarriage or stillbirth. That's why, as a pregnant woman, I've been very careful about it. On the day I had the checkup, I told my husband, Jonathan, about it during dinner. They said it's because of too much caffeine, but I don't think that's possible. I always check the ingredients of the food I eat. Could it be in foods that don't have ingredient labels? Like vegetables or meat, maybe you're eating them without realizing? I checked that too. But none of the foods I've been eating had those ingredients. Since the cause was unclear, I might be unknowingly consuming caffeine even while eating dinner. That's when it struck me. Could it be? I always check the ingredients of what I eat, but I hadn't checked what was in the side dishes made by Linda, my mother-in-law. Could her dishes be the cause? But Linda always comes to check on me and brings dishes because she knows I'm having a hard time with household chores. For a moment, I doubted Linda, but I immediately dismissed such a terrible thought. You've been looking a bit under the weather lately. Why don't you go and rest at your parents' place? I've got a business trip next week and won't be home for a few days. You could stay there and take it easy for a while. Thank you, maybe I will. Jonathan really cares about me a lot. The next holiday, I went to my parents' house, driven by Jonathan. You look exhausted. Are you okay? Pregnancy is tough, right? I remember feeling the same when I was pregnant with you. I guess everyone goes through tough times during pregnancy. Hearing my mother's words, I realized that I wasn't the only one suffering during pregnancy, and it seemed to lighten my mood a bit. After having my mother take care of things around me and resting for a week, my health improved, and I returned home. A month later, I safely gave birth to a healthy baby. You did great. Congratulations, she's a beautiful girl. So this is my granddaughter. She's adorable. Not only Jonathan but also Linda and George, my in-laws, came to the hospital. George was so happy about his long-awaited grandchild that he even shed tears. It made me happy to see them so delighted. Although there were times I worried about my health after giving birth, both the baby and I were healthy, and we were able to leave the hospital in about a week. Now we're a family of 3. It's been a week since we brought our daughter home, and my in-laws, George and Linda, have been coming over almost every day. Moreover, George brings loads of gifts for our daughter each time. Our house is already full of unopened baby items. Got something delivered today, so I brought it over. Dad, you're buying too much. Besides, these clothes are still too big for her. Is that so? But it's better to have them than not, right? Don't sweat the small stuff. George loves shopping extravagantly and spends his free time searching for baby items online, buying anything he likes right away. Because of this, several baby items for our daughter are delivered to their house every day. While I feel guilty for receiving so many gifts and wish they'd hold back a bit, I don't mind them visiting daily. They always consider not to burden us too much. All right, time to head back. Can't stay too long. Yes, you're right. They usually leave after George says this. Coming over around the time I finish lunch and cleanup, and staying no more than 2 hours, so it doesn't affect my evening routines much. It makes sense that Jonathan is such a kind person, having been raised by such loving parents. While they see our daughter almost daily, my own parents haven't met her yet. My parents' house is a bit farther than my in-laws, and it's been hard to align our schedules. Although I don't mind, Jonathan has been concerned whether I'm tired from his parents' daily visits. So, he suggested we take our daughter to meet my parents. And even stay overnight, considering the travel might be too much for her. Jonathan has weekends off, so he'll drop us off on Saturday morning and pick us up on Sunday evening. What a thoughtful husband. This Saturday, as I was packing the car to go to my parents', Linda arrived alone. I made it in time. What's up, Mom? I told you we wouldn't be here today and tomorrow, right? That's why I came. I couldn't bear not seeing her for 2 days, so I thought I'd see her before you leave. Linda, it's just for 2 days, isn't it? For me, 2 days is unbearable. Oh, and I brought this. It'll help her grow big and strong. Baby food? Linda, it's way too early for that. 4 or 5 months will fly by. It's shelf-stable in a pack, so no worries. I got it online, it's really popular and might sell out when you need it. Linda brought a present for my daughter. It was an assortment of baby foods in clear packs, looking quite expensive. Thank you as always. We're heading to my parents' house now. I could have left the baby food at home, but since I had already packed the car and didn't want to go back inside, I stuffed it into my bag. Welcome home. Finally, I get to see my first grandchild. Sorry we're late. We'll just relax today. My parents adored their first grandchild, not leaving her side, always by her. Bringing her here was definitely worth it. I'll have to thank Jonathan for the weekend rides when we get back. The next morning, while chatting with my mom, I casually showed her the baby food Linda gave us. Mom suddenly exclaimed loudly. This is from my mother-in-law. Baby food already. Isn't it funny? Throw it away right now. It was a set of 6 packs, but the one my mom pointed at had discolored a bit. Indeed, upon closer inspection, the color of the finely chopped vegetables seemed off. Mom noticed well. Though only one was discolored, it seemed like a minor incident of a defective product. But this slightly discolored baby food turned out to be the clue that unveiled a lurking devil. My mom insisted on throwing it away, but it was a gift from Linda. It seemed like a quality product, and I wanted to feed it to my daughter. So, I didn't throw it away and contacted the manufacturer to see if it could be replaced. They quickly agreed to send a new one. Impressive for a popular product company. Fast and courteous service. They also asked me to send back the discolored product for quality improvement, which I did. A few days later, the new product arrived. Checking it, the color seemed different from the slightly discolored one. Had my daughter eaten that discolored baby food, she might have been in danger. But it'll be months before she can eat it. If the contents were spoiled, even someone who didn't notice right away like my mom did would probably have realized it eventually, as the discoloration would have become more apparent. So, my daughter likely wouldn't have ended up eating it. So, I'm glad the defective product came to me, who won't be feeding it immediately. Had it gone to someone else who didn't notice the discoloration, it could have been terrible. The company's response was thorough, so I expect such mistakes won't happen again. Therefore, I'm not blaming the company for the defective product. I consider this matter resolved. Just as I thought this, I received a call from the company. Hello? What do you mean? I don't quite understand what you're saying. The call from the company was shockingly unexpected, and I couldn't grasp the situation immediately. It turned out that the baby food had discolored because someone had intentionally injected honey into it. Not during the manufacturing process. The needle hole in the pack was sealed with adhesive, like the kind used for repairing vinyl pools. Although they couldn't identify who purchased the baby food, it was clear it was sold online. There were no issues in the manufacturing process, and since the problem occurred after the sale, the company couldn't do much. However, since it ended up with me, they informed me of the investigation results. They also suggested that if someone gave it to me, I should be cautious of that person. Impressive work by the company. An amateur couldn't have identified the adulteration or the detailed method of tampering. I didn't intend to make a big deal out of it, but if someone was targeting my precious daughter, that's a different story. Babies under 1 year old can develop infant botulism from eating honey, which is rare but can be fatal. And I had a suspect in mind. After hanging up with the company, I immediately went to the police. However, they said they couldn't do anything. I returned home. Told they couldn't proceed as no one had consumed the baby food, and no harm was done. I couldn't blame the police, their response was reasonable. So, I decided to take matters into my own hands and started by telling my husband everything that evening. That happened? But the company gave you the information. We might be able to do something about it. Right? That's why I need you to ask for a favor. Understood. I'll see what I can find out. A few days later, as usual, George and Linda came to see our daughter. But instead of going to her, my husband and I sat George down at the living room table while I spoke with Linda. What's the matter? Why do all of you look so serious? Linda's expression was anxious, and her voice was slightly trembling, as if she was starting to sense what was happening. Could you please take a look at this? I presented Linda with a printout of the purchase history from their online shopping account. It showed records of buying a culinary syringe, used for injecting flavors into meats, and adhesive for vinyl, which George had printed for me. According to the company, the tampered baby food had been purchased online. Furthermore, culinary syringes are not items that can be easily bought at local supermarkets or dollar stores. Suspecting Linda as the perpetrator, I thought she might have bought these tools online along with the baby food, so I had George check their online shopping history. George and Linda shared an online shopping account, and the platform they used doesn't allow deletion of purchase history. Linda, realizing she couldn't delete the history, had set the purchases to hidden. However, hiding them only concealed them temporarily. George was able to find the purchases when he changed the settings. The baby food had honey in it. These items here, you bought them, right? Can you explain? Well, I bought the syringe to try out. You love dumplings, right? I thought it would make them juicier. And the adhesive was for a hole in the garden hose, but it turned out to be too weak to work. Her excuses came too easily, as if she had prepared them in case she got caught. Her expression was clouded, and her voice trembled more. But if Linda simply bought items she needed, this purchase history wasn't conclusive proof of her guilt. So, I played my next card. And what about this? I showed a purchase history of caffeine tablets. I was told during a prenatal checkup that I had too much caffeine. Linda, you bought caffeine tablets. What were you using them for? I use them to stay awake. I often get sleepy in the afternoon. Are you sure you only use them for yourself? Yes, they were just for me. Despite my growing suspicions of Linda due to her attempts to harm me and my daughter, and the caffeine incident, I struggled to believe that the mother-in-law, who had always been kind to me, could do such things. I was prepared to forgive her a little if she admitted her guilt in response to my insistence. However, if she continued to deny it, I had no choice but to reveal my final card. If you insist you don't know, then I'll have to take this to the police. Why do you have that? What I presented as my last card was the food Linda had made for me during my pregnancy, which I had frozen. While I was recovering at my parents' house and even in the month leading up to my delivery, Linda continued to bring dishes. At that time, my distrust of her was still minor, so I accepted the food without saying anything, feeling reluctant to throw it away, and froze it instead. Eventually, I decided to discard the older items, but some from just a few weeks ago remained. I'll have the police check if these contain caffeine. I actually developed insomnia, so this could potentially be considered a case of assault. As evidence of harm, I'll take these purchase records and my pregnancy diagnosis. If the police start investigating, excuses like the ones you're making now certainly won't work. I learned from my experience with the honey-laced baby food incident that to get the police involved, there must be evidence of harm. With the caffeine case, I was the victim and had evidence to support it. While it's uncertain whether this evidence will be sufficient for the police to take action, the possibility is certainly higher now. However, my aim wasn't primarily to rely on the police, it was to get Linda to acknowledge her wrongdoing. I'm sorry. I did it. Faced with the possibility of being reported to the police, Linda finally conceded and admitted her guilt. Mom, why did you do this? I became anxious when the baby was born. My father-in-law, George, is a bold and generous man, often treating people to drinks. When he found out about my pregnancy, he said he'd buy anything, causing my mother-in-law, Linda, to worry about overspending. But Linda has always been a reserved person, not one to confront George. Even if she did try, I can't imagine her stopping George's exuberant nature. Indeed, I've never seen Linda raise her voice or reprimand George. Instead, I picture George, if confronted, pushing forward with his decisions. So, instead of trying to stop George, Linda started to plot against me. She crushed caffeine pills and mixed them into my food, hoping to induce a miscarriage. My husband also ate the food, but being pregnant, it affected me more severely. After the birth, George, as expected, went on a shopping spree for all sorts of baby items. The money he's spending is supposed to be for their retirement. Their growing financial strain and anxiety, along with Linda already crossing a line with the caffeine incident, led her to target my newborn daughter. She didn't use anything immediately lethal, starting with something like honey, which can be dangerous for infants. But human behavior escalates. If I hadn't noticed the honey, she might have just thrown it away, thinking it had gone bad. Not realizing the danger of the honey might have meant not being able to stop Linda from escalating her actions, putting my daughter at risk. The thought chills me. It was fortunate that the baby food was in a transparent package.
"Why didn't you tamper with the formula instead of the baby food?" I asked.
The formula was in a can. We bought the baby's milk in large cans. To tamper with the same milk, she would have had to open the can, which couldn't be done without leaving evidence, unlike the baby food that could be injected through a tiny hole. Furthermore, once we started on solid foods, my daughter might refuse anything given to her. So, Linda thought it best to act before we introduced solid foods. The early action was planned for when she could be alone in our house. George always accompanied her on visits to see the baby and was the primary buyer of baby items. If Linda suddenly bought baby food and gifted it to my daughter, George would get suspicious. She was waiting for the right moment, but when my husband told her I would be visiting my parents for 2 days, she saw her opportunity and hurriedly prepared, visiting our house alone without George's knowledge.
"You fool! What were you thinking?"
"I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Linda was left speechless, crying and continually apologizing. Though she had put me and my daughter in danger, Linda is generally a sensible person. But it's precisely because she has common sense that realizing and admitting her guilt has deeply wounded her. George and Linda apologized to us. George continued to scold Linda in a voice loud enough to worry about neighbors calling the police. Linda kept crying and apologizing, her face a mess from tears. "George, Linda seems genuinely remorseful. Let's leave it at that."
"No! I'm partly to blame too. Let me take responsibility."
"Well, in that case." As conditions for accepting Linda's apology, I suggested she explain the situation to the police under George's supervision to be accountable for her actions, apologize to the baby food manufacturer for the trouble caused, and not see our daughter until we deemed it appropriate. Linda accepted these conditions, spoke to the police and apologized to the manufacturer. The police treated it as a domestic issue and issued a stern warning. The manufacturer accepted her apology. However, we decided not to let Linda see our daughter for a while. Affected mentally by the incident, Linda has become quiet at home, performing household chores but seemingly lost in thought. With this issue resolved, our family of 3 is enjoying a peaceful and happy life, free from worries. My granddaughter was born, and Cheryl's condition has significantly stabilized. I received news of her discharge from the hospital, so I took my niece, Sarah, to visit my eldest son and his wife's house. As soon as Sarah saw the baby sleeping in the crib, she exclaimed, "What a cute baby. But this child's dad is an uncle, right? Why are you hiding that this is the uncle's child? It's sad if the uncle doesn't raise him." Everyone present widened their eyes at her words. Sarah has always been able to see mysterious things. She can see connections between people that are invisible to the eye. If Sarah says so, there must be no mistake. I completely believed in her supernatural ability. If that's the case, what Yosef has been doing. Just thinking about it makes my skin crawl. I deeply regret not realizing it sooner. However, I can't just stand still. Sarah gave me advice. That's why I must carry out my revenge. My name is Kelly, a 50-something housewife. I live with my husband, Yosef. We have one son, our eldest, Stevie, who has left home and started his own family. We received news that our eldest son's wife, named Cheryl, was pregnant. This would be their first child. They had been thinking about the difficulties of pregnancy for a while, so during Cheryl's pregnancy, they stayed with us. Cheryl's condition was worse than expected. She often spent entire days confined to her room. I thought it wasn't good for either the baby or Cheryl, so, knowing it was meddlesome, I decided to take her outside. Cheryl, staying in your room all the time isn't good for you. I'm not saying you have to go out in the sun, but could you at least come to the living room and show your face? I know I'm being pushy. Since she came to our house 2 weeks ago, Cheryl hadn't shown her face to me after the first day. It seemed she was eating only what Stevie bought, which made me worry even more about her health. However, when I called through Cheryl's door, there was no response. Maybe she had collapsed inside. That would be a serious matter, and I needed to act quickly. With that in mind, I said, "I'm coming in," and opened the door, only to find Cheryl lying on the bed, looking at her phone. It seemed she wasn't physically ill, which was a relief. But then why didn't she respond when I called through the door? Irritated, I said a bit harshly, "If you're feeling okay, you could have responded. I was really worried about you. What if you had collapsed in your room?" I regretted my tone afterwards and apologized, "Sorry, I was too harsh. But I was truly worried, that's why." I was tormented by the thought that my actions might worsen my relationship with Cheryl. I couldn't bear the thought that my actions might negatively affect Cheryl and the baby. I was tormented by all sorts of thoughts swirling in my head. Cheryl finally spoke. "That's terrible." Her words pierced my heart. Unable to say anything, Cheryl continued to stab me with her words. "You're terrible for stressing out a pregnant woman. You know my body isn't just mine right now, right? If I get stressed and sick, the baby will suffer too. You get that? You must understand, having given birth to Stevie yourself. Pregnancy is really tough. No matter what, you shouldn't stress out a pregnant woman by using such harsh words." Cheryl lashed out at me in one breath. But it was my fault. I should have thought things through and acted more considerately for Cheryl's sake. "Cheryl, I'm truly sorry. I didn't mean to. I was just worried about you. The thing is, your concern is just meddling. Get this straight, you and I aren't family. We're complete strangers. Why would strangers be interested in each other's business, right? So please, just leave me alone. Even if I collapse, I won't take help from you. Got it?" I wondered if my actions had really been so untrustworthy. Had I been so terrible to be told we're not family? The words "not family" pierced and tore at my heart, making it painful to even stand there. Cheryl looked at me, chuckled, and said, "Why are you just standing there? This is my room. Can you, a stranger and not family, please leave? Having someone who's not family in my room is stressful. What if it affects the baby? I'm sorry, but..." "No excuses. Now, get out. I can manage without your help." With that, Cheryl stood up and pushed me out of her room. I was thrown out and the door slammed shut behind me. That's what happened. I later talked to Yosef during dinner. Yosef then said, "Cheryl must have her own reasons. It's not good to step in too much." But I, believing that family should at least support and interact with each other, couldn't accept his view and replied, "But that's just sad, isn't it? You're the one making things difficult. Learn to be more considerate of others." His words stabbed deep into my heart. Not family. A source of stress. Could it be that my existence is just a nuisance to Cheryl? Were all my actions out of concern for Cheryl just meddling? I lost confidence in my actions. Uncertain of what to do next, I stopped interacting with Cheryl entirely. Then, Cheryl was hospitalized for childbirth and safely delivered a baby. It was a healthy baby girl.
"We'll take care of our child on our own, so please don't get involved,"
she said, and they returned home. Stevie seemed apologetic about Cheryl's words, but I reassured him, "Don't worry about it." Since then, I hadn't been able to see my granddaughter. It's my first grandchild, yet I couldn't meet her. I tried contacting Stevie, but apparently, Cheryl's not in good health, and they don't want to add any unnecessary stress. A few days later, my niece, Sarah, came to visit. She's in 2nd grade this year, the daughter of my sister's family, and has been very dear to our family since she was a baby. Stevie also really likes his younger cousin, Sarah. Knowing she was here, he said, "We'd love for her to come over." It seems Cheryl's condition has stabilized. So I took Sarah to visit my eldest son and his family. While Stevie happily went to get some juice, Sarah, Cheryl, and I went to see the baby sleeping in the room. "This is our daughter." "Is this your first time meeting a baby, Sarah?" Cheryl seemed kind to Sarah, probably because she had seen Stevie getting along well with her. However, when I tried to pick up the baby, Cheryl sternly told me, "Oh, please don't touch my daughter. I can't risk you injuring her." So, I decided to just watch quietly. With Cheryl's help, Sarah held my granddaughter. Then, Sarah said something shocking, "What a cute baby. But her dad is my uncle, right? Why are you hiding that she's the uncle's child? It's sad if the uncle doesn't raise her."
"Sarah, what are you saying?"
Cheryl was trembling so much, it was the perfect word to describe her state. Stevie returned with the juice and was taken aback by the tense atmosphere. That's when it all clicked for me. That's why Cheryl had been acting like that. All the things that had happened to me suddenly made sense. At the same time, I felt an unbearable anger towards Cheryl and Yosef. That's why I decided to take revenge. "Cheryl, this child is mine and Stevie's. So don't say she's Yosef's." Cheryl quietly took the baby from Sarah's arms and said. But Sarah tilted her head even more and insisted, "But her dad is Uncle Yosef. I can see it clearly. She's Cheryl's and Uncle Yosef's child. Why is Stevie raising her?" Cheryl's reaction was evasive and hesitant. Sarah has a special ability. She can feel connections between people that are usually invisible to the eye. But sometimes, she shares these feelings with me. Sarah's insights have never been wrong. So my sister's family and I wholeheartedly believe in her abilities. Stevie, too. Stunned by Sarah's words, Stevie asked, "What's all this about? Is what Sarah's saying true? If so, then you." But Cheryl, in a sudden burst of anger, retorted, "Are you believing what this kid says? I'm your wife. If I say it's your child, then it is. It's her fault for spouting nonsense. Correct yourself right now. This child is mine and Stevie's." Her demeanor was completely different from her usual composure. It made us realize she had hit a nerve. Shocked by Cheryl's outburst, Sarah hid behind me. While protecting her, I said, "We'll leave for today and talk again later." Stevie nodded in agreement. We didn't discuss anything further and went home without explaining anything to Yosef. Later, Stevie and I decided to gather more evidence against Cheryl and Yosef before confronting them. A few days later, after discussing with Stevie, we decided to have a family meeting at my eldest son's house. Stevie needed to prepare certain things, and I had tasks to complete too, so this preparation period was essential. I had hired a detective agency to investigate Yosef's activities. Despite concerns that Cheryl might not reveal anything since she was at the scene, Yosef, unaware of everything, inadvertently provided evidence of their affair. This evidence was shared with Stevie. Meanwhile, Stevie had arranged a DNA test for the baby, confirming the child was not his. Further testing revealed a parental link to Yosef. In other words, the child Cheryl gave birth to was not Stevie's but Yosef's and Cheryl's. With irrefutable evidence in writing, I won't let them make any excuses. I intend to corner them both thoroughly. Why did you call us here all of a sudden? Is something wrong? Yosef, unaware of anything, asked nonchalantly. Stevie and I seemed busy, and Cheryl was fidgeting, seemingly sensing that something unusual was going on. Actually, there's something I want to talk about. With that, I broached the main subject. You two have been having an affair, haven't you? And for a long time. This child is actually Yosef and Cheryl's, isn't it? You tried to pass her off as Stevie's child, right? At my words, Yosef exclaimed in surprise, "What?" Then, in a flustered manner, he said, "How can you say such a thing? There's no way Cheryl and I could be in that kind of relationship. Cheryl is Stevie's wife, isn't she? I would never make a move on her. It's insulting to both Cheryl and me, apologize."
Yeah, right. Do you even have any proof? There's none, right? You can't possibly be believing what that child said, can you? Believing the words of an 8-year-old kid? That's impossible.
Yosef and Cheryl both vehemently denied their relationship. To be honest, this was within the realm of our expectations. We knew all too well that they wouldn't easily admit to their affair. Before you go on, would you please look at this? Stevie said, presenting a piece of paper to Cheryl, who was busy making excuses. It was the result of a DNA test. The facts were clearly stated there. The baby born was not Stevie's but Yosef's child. Seeing this, Cheryl and Yosef turned pale.
This is a fabrication. I would never cheat, Stevie knows that best, right? Please, believe me over this piece of paper. No matter what you say, the test results don't lie. You've been lying to me all this time. That's exactly what's written on this paper. Stop making excuses and admit your guilt already. Apologize for hurting me and my mother. I don't even want to see your face anymore. Cheryl, looking dejected, hung her head. It's not true, it's not my fault. Yosef came on to me. I never planned to have a child. Believe me, it's true. Cheryl tried to escape blame by shifting it all onto Yosef. Of course, such behavior was inexcusable. Yosef, facing the blame being shifted onto him, turned red with anger and exclaimed, "What are you talking about? You're the one who came on to me, saying you wanted a child with me, suggesting passing it off as mine. You were the one hinting at that." He grabbed Cheryl by the collar in frustration. But Cheryl was not intimidated. What are you talking about? It's all your fault. If only you had hidden it better, everything would have been fine. I did hide it well. It's your fault for not being able to deceive. What did you say? Blaming everything on others, how dare you?
Cheryl and Yosef continued to argue fiercely in front of us. Their dispute escalating by the minute, showing no signs of stopping. We could have let them argue, but that wouldn't help us achieve our revenge, so Stevie and I exchanged glances, preparing to present the next piece of evidence. During this time, Yosef and Cheryl continued their argument. When they started throwing things around the room, Stevie intervened, saying, all right, Dad and Cheryl, calm down. We're not done talking yet." At Stevie's words, their faces, which were red with anger, quickly turned pale, and they sat down, visibly deflated. Now we could finally move on to the next step. Our revenge drama was just beginning. Suppressing our agitated emotions, we prepared to further corner the two of them. Sorry, but there's more evidence. Would you mind taking a look? Saying this, I laid out the evidence received from the detective agency on the table. There were several photos capturing the two of them walking arm in arm through the night streets. Oh, by the way, I consulted with a lawyer, and with this much evidence, we can claim a significant amount in damages. Since both Cheryl and Yosef will have to pay, it's going to be quite a burden, especially for Cheryl. I guess she'll have to take out a loan or something, right? I asked with a smirk, and Cheryl, in a panic, stopped blaming Yosef and pleaded, no, please. I can't pay damages. I'm just a housewife. It seemed that even Cheryl understood the difficulty of paying alimony as a housewife. Of course, I had no intention of lessening the punishment. We had agreed to take whatever we could. No matter how much you say it's impossible, we're going to take every penny we can. You knew the risk when you cheated, right? Didn't you imagine this could happen one day?
But that's not true. I'm not the one to blame. It was Yosef who came on to me.
What are you talking about?
You're the one who approached me. You said it'd be fine as long as we had a plan if we got caught. I trusted you, and this is what happens.
Both of their excuses were terrible. Yosef's was even worse. Thinking it's okay to cheat as long as you have a plan for when you get caught? No way. They should have been prepared to face the consequences together. Sorry, but no matter what you say, it's useless. I'm going to divorce Yosef.
Wait. I won't cheat again. I got carried away this time. I swear I'll never betray you again. Please, anything but divorce.
Once the trust is broken, it's zero. Don't you get that?
No way.
Hearing about the divorce, Yosef slumped down. It made sense, we were both in our 50s. Building a new family was practically impossible. Living alone requires a certain resolve. Yosef, having no siblings, might end up spending his life in complete solitude. But no matter the reason, I had no intention of forgiving Yosef. Realizing my determination, Yosef knelt down and begged, I was wrong to cheat, I admit it. Please reconsider, just once. I love you, Kelly, I really do. Please give me one more chance. But I just smiled sweetly at him and said, sorry, but you need to give up. I can't be with you anymore. Persistent men are unattractive, you know? After my words, Yosef fell silent. Stevie then said to Cheryl, we're getting divorced too, so be prepared. Cheryl cried out, wait.
What about the child? She needs both her parents. Please, for her sake and mine, don't get divorced.
Take care of someone else's child? Stevie asked, and Cheryl fell silent, unable to respond. To Stevie, the child Cheryl had given birth to was not his own, but the child of a man who would soon no longer be his father. For Stevie, spending his life raising such a child would be an unbearable burden. Both Cheryl and Yosef seemed devastated by the prospect of their futures, remained silent. Seeing this, Stevie and I sighed in relief. For a long time, we had been betrayed. Perhaps, without knowing any of this, I would have continued my relationship with Yosef, and Stevie would have raised a child that wasn't his, leading a miserable life. Though the child was innocent, that wasn't the life we wanted. Our lives are our own. Being conveniently manipulated by Cheryl and Yosef was unacceptable. Living life for oneself, seizing it with one's own hands, that's what life is all about. Today, we won back our lives. After that, my husband and I proceeded with the divorce procedures. Despite the discussions coming to a round conclusion, as expected, Yosef stubbornly resisted, saying he didn't want a divorce, making things quite difficult. However, by taking the matter to court and using the photos from the detective agency as evidence, Yosef finally admitted defeat, and the divorce was finalized. The affair became known at his company, and Yosef was laid off. He now lives in a shabby apartment, somehow managing to pay the alimony. As for my son and his wife, their divorce was also finalized. Unlike Yosef, Cheryl didn't resist much. Probably it's because she thought she had options being younger. After the divorce, Cheryl returned to her parents' home, hoping they would cover the alimony. However, upon learning the truth, her parents were furious and turned her away. Left with no support from her parents, Cheryl is somehow managing to repay the alimony by borrowing money from less than ideal sources. The baby is being raised by Cheryl's parents. Despite the hardships, things finally settled down, allowing us to take a breath. Honestly, what Yosef and Cheryl did was quite shocking from our point of view. But now, we're living life looking forward. Stevie and I, having gone through so much, will continue to stay in touch. Our connection with Sarah, who helped us at that time, has remained strong.
Stevie, in particular, is grateful to Sarah and has been spending more time with her since then. As a mother, I want to do my best to support Stevie. Starting today, you're gonna take care of me. You're my daughter-in-law, so forget about having any freedom.
I won't do any caregiving.
Goodbye.
I guess my mother-in-law didn't expect me to refuse so bluntly. She was stunned.
How can you say such a thing? Taking care of me is your duty as a daughter-in-law. Then why don't you ask your beloved girlfriend to do it?
With that, I left my in-laws' house. My name is Emily, and I'm 28 years old. I just got divorced recently. My mother passed away when I was in 5th grade, so my father raised me. I come from a single-father household. That father also passed away in a car accident when I was in my junior year of high school. Having become an orphan, I lived in a facility until I graduated from high school. After graduating, I started working as an office clerk at a construction company and began living alone in an apartment. I had no romantic relationships like other young women. At 26, hearing about a friend from the facility who got married to someone she met on a dating app, I felt envious and quickly signed up for the app myself. On the app, I could start relationships easily, but as soon as men heard I'd spent almost a year in a facility, they all left. The only relationship that lasted was with a guy my age named Mike. Mike, being the eldest son, said that even after marriage we would live at his family's home.
Whenever I mention living at home after marriage, women run away. I get the same reaction from men when I say I lived in a facility.
We laughed like this, and that's how our relationship started. After dating for about a year, Mike proposed to me, and thinking I'd finally have a family, I happily agreed. I was a bit excited and hopeful about living in a suburban house with my in-laws.
Emily, I heard you used to help your dad with household chores when you were young. What a wonderful girl. I bet you're great at cooking too.
My mother-in-law said this gently when I visited to greet them before marriage. Raised in a single-father home and having tough memories from the facility, I thought about living with my in-laws, being filial to my mother-in-law, and sometimes seeking her comfort. It was a relief when she said she would receive my belongings at the in-laws' house after I moved out of my apartment 3 days after the wedding. At 9 a.m., the moving truck arrived, and my few belongings were quickly loaded into a small truck. After cleaning the apartment and checking the utilities, I finished the necessary paperwork at the office and headed to my in-laws' house with high spirits. It was a weekday, and I had taken a day off for the move. When I arrived, I noticed some of my boxes were already unpacked.
Thanks for starting to organize my things.
But then, unbelievable words came back. You're just after a property, aren't you? The proof is that there's hardly anything of value in your stuff. You must have seduced Mike just to live in a house. Typical of a poor girl. I was momentarily confused. Was this the same person I met before the wedding? Why had she changed so drastically? My head was filled with questions, but I began to understand what my mother-in-law was saying. Looking where she pointed, I saw my Coach bag hanging among her bags in the hallway. I couldn't afford luxury brands, but I had wanted at least one nice bag, so I bought it from a Coach outlet online using part of my bonus. It was essentially my only valuable possession, and my mother-in-law had taken it as if it were hers.
Please give it back. It's mine, and you can't just open my boxes and do whatever you want.
I couldn't help but raise my voice. Then came an unbelievable reply. Don't be ridiculous as a daughter-in-law. What's yours is mine. More importantly, living in a house means cleaning inside and out, so I need to teach you. Wondering what she would make me do, I followed her out the door. It was just a moment. My mother-in-law pushed me from behind, and I plunged face first into the drainage ditch in front of the entrance. As I began to pick myself up, I heard her mocking laughter. Just got dirty, huh? It would have been funnier if you got hurt too. Satisfied with my fall into the ditch, she closed and locked the front door. Covered in mud, I knew I had to find a way into the house. She clearly wasn't going to open the door for me. Knowing she would interfere by any means if she realized I wanted to get inside, I quietly entered the property and headed to the southern side where the garden was. Just then, my mother-in-law was putting away bedding, so I pressed myself against the western wall and waited. The dirty water was seeping into my clothes, making me cold, and I felt a sneeze coming on. But I couldn't give up now, so I desperately held it back. When it seemed like she had finished with the bedding, I moved to a window on the south side. As I thought, she had left the window unlocked, planning to lock it after putting away the bedding. I entered the house through there and hurried to the bathroom. I quickly stripped off my muddy clothes, rummaged through a cardboard box for a bath towel and bathrobe, and started showering. But a few minutes into my shower, my mother-in-law began pounding on the bathroom door.
You pay before you use a bath. Don't use someone else's bathroom without permission.
At that moment, I clearly realized. It was because of her that Mike couldn't get married. When my husband returned home, I told him about the truck incident, the drainage ditch incident, the coach bag incident, and how it seemed my high-end skincare products had been used by my mother-in-law. And that's why I had such a terrible time, I said.
Terrible? Don't ever speak ill of my mother again. This house was inherited by her, an only child, from her parents. My dad died when I was in second grade, but we managed to get by till today because of this house. Living here for free is all thanks to her.
So, Mike is just a mama's boy. You don't have anywhere else to go, do you?
It's brazen of you to stay in this house without paying rent. Instead, you'd better dedicate yourself to us as payment.
That was my mother-in-law's favorite thing to say. Mike never contributes to the household expenses. I buy necessities and groceries out of my own income. It seems neither my mother-in-law nor Mike is satisfied with anything I do.
Your meals are so repetitive. It's like you're serving leftovers every day.
I thought I had been doing well, alternating fish and meat dishes. But it seems they dislike everything I do.
What about contributing to the household expenses? Household expenses? Bringing a poor woman like you here was meant for you to work hard in both your job and house chores, like a horse. Don't you get it yet? Do you know where Mike is right now?
About 2 months after our marriage, she suddenly asked me this.
Maybe at work or on the train home, right? He's at his favorite girlfriend's house. What? Really? There's a girl he really likes, Natalie, you know. But when she came to greet us and didn't like something here, she refused to live with me. I told Mike he couldn't marry a woman who wouldn't live with me and in this house, so they broke up. Why is he still seeing a woman he broke up with? You're such a dimwit. They just decided not to get married but are still in a good relationship. I didn't like it, so I decided to take out my frustration on whoever Mike brought home as his wife, thinking it would be Natalie. And then you showed up.
It's pathetic to realize I'm being harassed every day just because of that. Then the incident happened. As I was about to enter the bathroom, a bath towel was on the floor, and I slipped. The fall hurt all over. Mike was home, so I shouted for help, but there was no response. I had no choice but to crawl out of the bathroom, hastily wrap myself in whatever I had just taken off in the changing room, and crawl to my bag. In my bag were my card case, wallet, and phone. I figured with these, I could manage somehow. Since both my husband and mother-in-law were ignoring me, I reluctantly called an ambulance using my phone, crawled to the entrance to wait for the paramedics, and was taken to the hospital. I was diagnosed with a fractured foot, and since I hit my head on the wall when I fell, I needed to have brain scans and ended up being hospitalized. I messaged Mike about being hospitalized. He read the message but didn't reply to ask which hospital, which means he probably doesn't care about me. He's likely gone off to be with that Natalie woman, thinking it's convenient for him. Other patients had their families bring them pajamas and change of clothes, and their used items were taken home for laundry. With no family visiting, I had no choice but to wear the hospital's rental clothes. The rentals had the hospital's name embroidered prominently on the left chest pocket, which was quite noticeable. Walking awkwardly with crutches to the toilet, I endured the stares of people comparing the embroidery on my right chest with my face. During visiting hours, patients' rooms became noisy with families and friends crowding in, and some patients even got cautioned by nurses for the disturbance. On my 6th day of hospitalization, the female doctor who examined me on the night I was admitted explained the results of my tests and the prospects of my discharge. "Could you possibly postpone my discharge date as much as possible?" I pleaded with her. To my surprise, she smiled gently and said, "It seems like you have some serious reasons." The doctor asked me to wait outside the consultation room, and after a few minutes, she appeared with a wheelchair, urging me to sit. She then pushed me to the hospital's rooftop.
"I've been concerned about the circumstances leading to your injury ever since the night you were brought in."
Hearing this, tears came before words, and I couldn't stop crying. Just the thought that someone cared about me filled me with overwhelming happiness. The doctor spoke kindly to me as I struggled to speak through tears. She patiently waited for me to calm down and listened to my story seriously. She also shared some similar cases she knew of, which was quite striking. "It seems safer for you not to return there ever again," she said gently.
"That's why I wanted to postpone my discharge."
"But even if we delay your discharge, going back to such a place full of anxiety is pointless," she reasoned.
"Earlier, you mentioned a patient who gathered evidence of domestic violence from her husband and won compensation. How can I gather such evidence? I plan to leave that house eventually, but I want to make sure I get my revenge properly."
Understanding my firm resolve, the doctor repeated the importance of never returning to my in-laws' house for my safety, but then she provided me with various useful information. She mentioned that there's a wide variety of hidden cameras available, resembling Starbucks cups, pens, or even glasses. Since I always wear glasses at home after taking off my contacts, the glasses type seemed particularly useful. I deserve to be treated as an important individual. And I can't settle my feelings without proper retribution. 2 weeks later, with the doctor's concerned words, "Please come to the hospital if anything happens, and don't overdo it," I was discharged. Armed with various voice recorders and hidden cameras I had ordered online, delivered to the doctor's home. I had spent nearly my card's limit on this equipment, but to someone who had resolved to face death once, this seemed trivial. The doctor had also prepared 2 crutches for me. I had done a lot of walking training in the hospital's rehabilitation room, so they weren't absolutely necessary. But she had rented them for my safety.
That kind of family, knowing you have a fracture, might try to knock you down or push you to fall. But psychologically, it's hard for someone to aggressively attack another person who is using crutches. Think of these crutches as a weapon to stop their attacks, and if you ever feel in grave danger, use them to strike back.
I was grateful for the crutches, but more so, I was touched that someone cared enough to think about my safety in such detail. Upon my early discharge, my mother-in-law reacted just as I had anticipated. However, I wasn't saddened by anything she said. In fact, I was wearing hidden camera glasses and had voice recorders in my bag and coat pockets, successfully gathering evidence. The worse she spoke, the more I inwardly smirked, thinking, "You're just making things worse for yourself.
You've been gone from this house for 2 months, and yet you have the nerve to come back? I thought you'd run away somewhere because you found it hard to return." "Well, you say that, but weren't you the one who laid the bath towel in the bathroom, causing me to fall? It wasn't my choice to leave. Your actions caused my fracture and hospitalization. How dare you address me, your mother-in-law, so informally? I've let you live in this house for free, and yet you're so ungrateful. So, you admit to laying the towel down to harm me, even to the point of death?" "Of course. As the head of this house, I can do whatever I want."
I found it somewhat amusing to hear such terrible things. Each cruel action by my mother-in-law was turning into advantageous evidence for me. The next morning was even more dramatic. There's a 30-minute gap between my husband leaving for work and my departure. My mother-in-law always plotted something during this time. As I headed to the entrance, she stealthily approached from behind and kicked my right crutch. Although I couldn't capture the moment on my glasses camera, I exaggeratedly fell and struck her head hard with my left crutch. She too fell face first to the floor. With voice recorders in my bag and computer shoulder bag turned on, I spoke loudly before she could yell.
How could you do that? Kicking away one of the crutches of someone who can't walk without them? I can't stand having a stranger like you in this house. You should have been gone to the other world by now, not walking around with these crutches.
This was exactly what I wanted. I no longer felt bothered by her cruel words. Rather, I was pleased, as each word added to the evidence in my favor. And it seemed she hadn't realized that I had intentionally struck her with my crutch. Her harassment and sarcasm continued, but it was all playing into my hands, as evidence piled up like a snowball. Since the incident with the crutch, I noticed her reactions had become slower.
Where's the curry powder I kept on this shelf?
It's just a misunderstanding. It's always in this cupboard.
Oh, as long as it's there.
I had moved the curry powder that was always on the shelf to the cabinet with folding doors, and it seemed like my mother-in-law realized it was her misunderstanding. It appeared that the hit from my crutch had indeed had an effect.
You're such a terrible wife. That's probably why Mike's coming home late tonight again.
Mike is probably at Natalie's place.
Natalie, who didn't want to live with you, is likely telling Mike all the reasons she dislikes you right now.
My mother-in-law, shaking with anger, threw a radish at me. I quickly dodged it, causing the radish to crash into the window and break the glass. Knowing everything was being recorded, I made sure to speak clearly for the voice recorders.
That's terrible. Were you trying to hit me in the head with that radish?
When Mike returned home, he was furious. It looks like you broke this window. Trying to make my mother sick in this cold?
It was your mom who threw the radish. You must have provoked her to do it. You're just lazing around with a little fracture, skipping work, slacking off at home chores, living a lazy life, and now this disgraceful act?
One day, my mother-in-law was in a traffic accident and got hospitalized. According to the police and the driver who hit her, she suddenly stepped onto a non-crosswalk road and couldn't be avoided. Her belief that pedestrians should always be avoided by cars had led to this accident. She should have been used to dodging cars with that mindset. But I think my crutch hit had slowed her reactions, preventing her from avoiding the car. With my mother-in-law hospitalized, I finally had some peaceful time at home. On weekends when Mike visited Natalie, I enjoyed my time alone, watching movies I had rented. Meanwhile, Mike seemed busy arranging for my mother-in-law's care after her accident left her partially paralyzed. It's only natural. He had to deal with getting a care bed, selecting a care manager, and meeting with helpers. He tried to push these responsibilities onto me, but I refused to take on any, leaving it all to him. During this time, I quietly proceeded with my plan. I leased an apartment an hour's drive away and moved my belongings there little by taxi while Mike was at work. The day Mike brought my mother-in-law home from the hospital, he said, "Now you can't escape. You'll start taking care of my mother from today. Starting today, you're gonna take care of me.
You're my daughter-in-law, so you owe me that much."
At that moment, I pressed a button.
I can't stand having a stranger like you in this house. You should have been gone to the other world by now, not walking around with these crutches.
My mother-in-law's insults played at maximum volume from the voice recorder throughout the house. One after another, her recorded abuses echoed.
Care for you? No way. I won't care for a stranger. Grab that strange device from her hand. Turn it off quickly. I have plenty more where that came from. I have 3 more copies. I'll submit this along with the footage from the hidden camera. I'm filing a civil lawsuit. My lawyer has everything prepared.
Then, I showed the nearly completed divorce papers.
You're joking, right? Where will you go, being all alone? Lawyers, divorce. Stop talking nonsense and change my diaper. How would you feel in my place? Would you want to take care of someone who hurled those words at you? Your actions merit police involvement for assault and insult. If you don't agree to the divorce, I'll contact my lawyer and have the police here in no time.
Intimidated by the mention of police, Mike obediently filled out the divorce papers and handed them to me.
You and your detestable family, who are nothing but strangers to me, I'm finally free from you all.
To this, Mike, belatedly filled with regret, pleaded with me.
It's a misunderstanding. I underestimated you. I thought you were a woman who would endure anything in this house. Please come back after cooling off a bit. Right. Marrying you was proof that Mike saw you as the only real woman for him. Stretch your wings a bit and then come back. Let's live together, the three of us.
With you strangers? You must be joking.
If you had treated me like a normal person, I might have happily taken on the caregiving. If only you had welcomed me warmly into the family when I first married and came here. I'm leaving a voice recorder here. Listen to it daily to remind yourselves of what you've done.
And with that, I left my in-laws' house behind. According to my lawyer, my bedridden mother-in-law and husband were subjected to police investigation and were charged with assault, injury, and insult. This proved that what they did to me was an act unforgivable as a human being. I received a substantial amount as compensation and for emotional distress. The money that came to me meant that Mike and his mother had to struggle, mortgaging their house and taking on debt. I heard from my lawyer that they were having a hard time. Furthermore, Mike, having been involved with the police, was forced to resign from his job. Each time my lawyer visited Mike and his mother, he noticed Mike becoming more haggard. The doctor who advised me provided various suggestions. While continuing my job at the construction company, I decided to learn something new for a side job. After my experience, I deeply understood how having a sum of money can save one's life. The doctor told me that programming could be a lifesaver, and with the money I received from my ex-husband and his mother, I started learning programming and took my first step forward. As my online programming lessons took off and I began dating a man I met through programming, I was in high spirits. That's when I was shocked to hear the news: bodies found in a suspected murder-suicide in a house. The names of the deceased mother and son in the news ticker were those of my former mother-in-law and husband. The news suggested it was a desperate murder-suicide due to the hardships of caregiving, but I doubted that the end of those two could be so beautiful. Regardless, those who tried to end my life were gone, and I was living actively, moving towards my next step. This was, in its own way, my victory.
What on earth is going on?
I muttered to myself, unable to believe the scene unfolding before my eyes. My husband was walking arm in arm with another woman, looking cozy. It was clear at first glance. He was having an affair. When I got home, I was beside myself with worry. Everything I did, thoughts of my husband and that woman haunted me. I hoped it was all a misunderstanding. But the more I wished for it, the more depressed I became. A week later, a call came from a junior colleague at work. The topic was about my husband's affair. Although feeling guilty, my colleague had investigated my husband's infidelity and handed me several pieces of evidence. Just as I thought. That day, I couldn't bring myself to cook dinner, let alone do the laundry or clean as usual. Completely listless, I just sat on the living room sofa, waiting for my husband to return. 5 hours later. As the surroundings darkened, my husband came home in high spirits.
"Honey, I'm home."
"What's up?" he asked, seeing me sitting silently in the dark room.
"What's this?"
I confronted him, showing the evidence photos I had received earlier that day. I was hoping he would admit to the affair and say he would leave her.
"I'm sorry. I was just tempted. But, I care about both you and the woman in those photos." "What? That's your excuse? You're kidding me."
I could maybe forgive him for admitting the affair. But to say he cares about both his wife and his mistress was just insane to me. I confronted him, and in response, he said,
"I seek comfort from you and excitement from her. Both are important to me. I can't imagine letting go of either of you."
Then, blatantly unapologetic, he headed to the bathroom. Both of us important. What kind of nonsense is that? It's like being nothing more than a convenient woman. I shocked by my husband's unexpected response. I realized I couldn't live with this man any longer. While he was in the bath, I packed the bare minimum and decided to go back to my parents' house. My parents' house is an hour's drive from the house where I live with my husband.
Huh? What's up, sis?
My sister greeted me as I arrived. I learned from her that our parents were away in Alaska attending a relative's wedding.
Actually, my husband's been cheating on me, look.
I said, showing her the photos of my husband's infidelity.
What? He really cheated?
Though skeptical at first, my sister listened intently to my story. After I had finished, she said with a big smile,
"Congratulations, sis."
"Huh?" I was shocked by her heartless comment. My shock quickly turned to anger. Saying congratulations to me right now is just not appropriate.
Congratulations? Don't joke around. What's there to celebrate about being cheated on?
What? I mean, it is a good thing, isn't it? My sister spoke cheerfully, but I felt a disconnect in her tone. At that time, I didn't know the reason behind her attitude, which I would later discover. My name is Natalie. I'm 32 years old. I have a sister, Mary, 3 years younger than me, and we're complete opposites. Mary is always bright and good-looking. On the other hand, I have a gloomy personality and what you'd call a plain face. I lack confidence in my looks, which has always been a complex for me. However, despite our differences, we've always been close. It may sound weird coming from me, but Mary has always been a caring sister, choosing to live quietly, perhaps fearing comparison in looks and personality.
You're beautiful, you know. You don't have to worry about me, you should live more freely. I'm fine this way. I don't want to outshine you, sis.
We used to have such conversations. I really admire her. Time went by, and I went to college. One day, as I was walking around the campus, I had almost resigned myself to the idea that I wouldn't have any romantic experiences even in college.
Can I help you?
Suddenly, a man approached and spoke to me. I thought it was rude of him to be surprised after approaching me. He must have been shocked by my plain face. Thinking this, I was about to leave hurriedly, but the man said something unexpected. "You have a classic beauty. I've never seen such a wonderful woman."
Excuse me?
For the first time in my life, a man called me beautiful, and I was struck by a strange feeling, stopping in my tracks. I'm John, a sophomore. Would you like to join the tennis club?"
Tennis? Yeah. I really want to do club activities with someone like you. I'm flattered, but I've never played tennis. No worries. There are many beginners. I'm experienced, so I can teach you. Please?
Feeling good about being complimented on my looks, I couldn't turn down John's invitation and ended up joining the tennis club. Well, this kindness is probably just temporary, I thought, still lacking confidence in myself. But John was different. He always called me a classic beauty, and we had great conversations about our hobbies. John loves movies and Italian food, which I also enjoy. Soon, we hit it off and started dating.
Hey, Mary. I got a boyfriend. Really? Congratulations, sis.
Mary was overjoyed and cried tears of happiness when I told her. My college life became smooth sailing, and I had a lot of fun with John without any major fights. Then, John graduated from college first. At that time, he took me to meet his parents. "This is my girlfriend, Natalie. Please, be nice to her." Nice to meet you. Why so nervous? We're not here for a marriage proposal yet. Just relax. John is good at making conversations and jokes. Everyone naturally smiled listening to him. John's parents divorced when he was 3, due to his father's infidelity. Since then, he hasn't seen his dad and now lives with his grandmother, mother, and sister. Seeing John happily chatting with his family, I felt he was deeply loved. A year later, it was my turn to graduate from college. I've always been shy and preferred staying at home doing things like knitting and cooking. Wanting to turn my passion for cooking into a career, I decided to work in the food service industry. The job was pretty tough, but I was thrilled and motivated when assigned to a department developing new products, seeing my recipes turn into actual items. You've been doing great lately. Keep it up.
Yes, thank you. I'll do my best.
Feeling the expectations of my boss and colleagues, I grew to love my job even more. However, 7 years later, something unexpected happened. John invited me to a fancy Italian restaurant where he proposed.
I told you I'm being transferred to Dallas, right?
Yes.
I don't want to be apart from you, Natalie. Will you come with me to Dallas?
I was so happy about John's proposal that I almost cried. But I wasn't ready to leave my job yet.
I'm grateful, but can I have some time to think?
Sure. After that, we had a pleasant dinner and went home, but I couldn't stop thinking about how to respond. The next day, I went to work and shared the proposal news with my coworkers, seeking advice. I knew I should make my own decision, but I was torn.
Hey, what should I do? John wants me to move to Dallas with him, but I don't want to quit my job yet. What are you talking about? Being proposed to and getting married is the happiest thing. If you miss this chance, you might never find someone again. You should go.
Hearing those words, I had an epiphany. Sure, I didn't want to quit my job. But as my coworker said, missing this chance might mean no more boyfriends or marriage for me. All right, I've decided.
Thank you. Your words helped me decide. I'm going to quit my job and get married.
I reported my marriage and resignation to my boss. My boss was very happy for me.
It's a shame to lose someone as talented as you, but be happy with your husband.
Thank you so much. I'll do my best. And so, I married John and moved to Dallas. As a full-time homemaker, I honed my cooking skills even more.
The meals you cook are the best in the world,
John would say with a grateful smile. Every time he said that, I felt glad I got married. However, there was one thing we didn't see eye to eye on. About children. I desperately wanted children with John, but he wasn't keen, partly due to fertility issues on his side. Despite my suggestions for fertility treatments, he kept saying, "Not in the mood right now. Work's too busy," and kept refusing. Does he not want children with me? That thought left me feeling a bit lonely. Soon, I turned 30 and started feeling more anxious about having children. But all I got from John was, "Let's talk about it seriously sometime." 2 years ago, John was transferred back to the New York headquarters. During our time in Dallas, I kept in touch with my family frequently and was constantly asked about grandchildren. So, I decided this was the time to really discuss fertility treatments with John.
You know, my parents keep asking when they'll see a grandchild. Okay. Once we're back in New York, we'll get the treatment.
Reluctantly, John agreed to the fertility treatments after I mentioned what my family said. Maybe now, we could finally have a child. Excited, I eagerly awaited our return to New York. But I never imagined what would happen because of moving back. A month after returning, we started looking for fertility clinics. Though I was enthusiastic, John was still reluctant.
Hey! How about this place? It's close to home.
Eh? Oh, yeah, sure. His half-hearted response. It felt like I was the only one excited. I wanted to complain but held back and asked if I could make an appointment.
How about next Wednesday afternoon? I want to book it.
No, can't do that day. Just got back here, remember? Work's too busy, no time.
Then when can you make it?
I don't know yet. I'll let you know. Indeed, John was busier than when we were in Dallas, with more overtime and weekend work. But if I kept quiet, we'd never get to the treatment. Persistently nudging him over the next weeks finally paid off, and he begrudgingly agreed to take an afternoon off during the week. The day to visit the clinic arrived. John was coming directly from work, so I went to the hospital first. Today, the doctor will surely help us, and soon we'll be able to have a child. I arrived a bit early and waited in the hospital's lobby for John. But there was no sign of him arriving. What's going on? Our appointment time is almost here. I waited nervously for John, but he still hadn't arrived. Finally, our appointment time came, and I was called into the consultation room.
I believe we asked for both partners to attend the infertility treatment consultation. We can't determine the cause if only the wife comes,
the doctor said with a slightly exasperated expression. I could only bow my head and apologize. I stepped out of the consultation room and called John.
Hello? Our appointment time has long passed.
Sorry. Some urgent work came up. I can't make it today. John hurriedly ended the call. If it was work, he should have told me sooner. Frustrated and feeling let down, I felt a surge of stress. That's it. I decided to treat myself to some good food. Leaving the hospital, I headed towards the bustling downtown area. As I aimlessly wandered, pondering what to eat, someone suddenly called out to me. Hey, isn't that Natalie?
Huh?
I turned towards the voice and saw Sam, a junior from my college days, standing there.
Sam! Long time no see. How have you been?
I'm good. Wow, it's been a while, hasn't it? Maybe we could grab some coffee? I agreed to Sam's suggestion. Sam was a year below me in college and a junior in the tennis club. John knew him too. Now, he's working in human resources at the same company as John. As we were reminiscing about our college days and looking for a cafe, a bright red convertible appeared. And it stopped about 10 meters ahead of us. A wealthy-looking, flamboyantly dressed lady stepped out of the car. Wow, that's some car. I'd never be able to afford that in my life. Hey, isn't that John? I looked in the direction Sam was pointing. John had said he was working, and it was crowded downtown. It must be a mistake. But to my shock, it was unmistakably John.
What? John? Why?
I was in a panic. The last person I expected to see was right there. John, all smiles, got into the passenger seat of the flashy red convertible. The lady I had seen earlier was in the driver's seat. What on earth is going on? I was completely baffled and just stood there frozen.
Natalie? Natalie. Are you okay? Maybe I was mistaken.
Sam tried to console me, but I was certain that it was John.
He was wearing the same clothes as when he left this morning, and I would never mistake his face.
I told Sam, and then, unable to hold back any longer, I broke down in tears. I had reached my limit. All the emotions I had been holding back overflowed, and I couldn't stop crying.
Natalie. Let's calm down for a moment. Shall we go somewhere else?
Sam embraced me and comforted me in a private room at a nearby restaurant until I stopped crying. After regaining my composure, I said goodbye to Sam and went home. John came home very late that night.
You're late. What were you doing?
Eh? What do you mean?
I was working.
John was obviously lying. He ditched our plans for that woman. From that day on, I couldn't stop thinking about John and that woman. A week later, I received a call from Sam. He had something to tell me and asked me to meet at the restaurant we visited that day. John was working late again, so I accepted Sam's invitation.
So, what did you want to talk about? Well, actually,
Sam seemed to be having a hard time starting the conversation. But since she went out of her way to call me, there must be something important she wants to discuss.
Please, don't hesitate to tell me. Well, you know I work with John, right? Yes, I know that. There's a rumor going around the office that John might be having an affair with a client. I know it's presumptuous of me, but I hired a detective to investigate. Here, please take a look.
Sam handed me an envelope. Inside were numerous photos proving John's affair with that woman.
Is this real? Yes. John is definitely having an affair. But considering your situation, I won't report this to the company. I'll say there was no affair. However, you can use these photos and the detective's report as you see fit. Okay, got it, thanks.
After that, Sam and I had a light meal and then parted ways. Once I got home, feeling completely drained, I just sat on the living room sofa, waiting for John to return. 5 hours later. When it was completely dark, John came home in a good mood.
Honey, I'm home. What's up?
He asked me, puzzled, as I sat in silence without even turning on the lights.
What's this?
I confronted him, showing the evidence photos that Sam had given me. I was hoping that he would admit to the affair and say he would leave her. I was furious about the affair, but I still loved John and wanted children with him. I was ready to forgive him if he just admitted it and promised to leave her. Please say you'll leave her. But John's response was nothing like I expected.
I'm sorry. I got carried away. But I care about both you and the woman in these photos. What? That's your excuse? Are you kidding me?
I could maybe forgive him for admitting the affair. But to say he cares about both his wife and his mistress was just insane to me. I confronted him, and in response, he said, I seek comfort from you and excitement from her. Both are important to me. I can't imagine letting go of either of you. Then, blatantly unapologetic, he headed to the bathroom. Both of us important. What kind of nonsense is that? It's like being nothing more than a convenient woman. I shocked by John's unexpected response. I can't live with this man any longer. While he was in the bath, I packed the bare minimum and decided to go back to my parents' house. My parents' house is an hour's drive from the house where I live with my husband. On the way to my parents' house, I couldn't hold back my emotions and cried in the car.
Huh? What's up, sis?
My sister greeted me as I arrived at the house with swollen eyes from crying. I learned from her that our parents were away in Alaska attending a relative's wedding. Actually, my husband's been cheating on me, look. I said, showing her the photos of my husband's infidelity.
What? He really cheated?
My sister was skeptical at first, but listened seriously to my story. After I had finished, she said with a big smile, Congratulations, sis!
Huh?
I was shocked by her heartless comment. But then, I began to feel anger towards her. Saying congratulations to me right now is just not appropriate.
Congratulations? Are you kidding me? How is being cheated on something to celebrate?
What?
But it is something to celebrate.
My sister spoke cheerfully, but I sensed a cold tone in her voice. I couldn't believe she, who used to admire me so much, would say such a thing. Enough, I thought. I don't care about my husband or my sister anymore. Feeling reckless, I left the documents and photos on the living room table and went back to my room. Little did I know then, I would later learn the reason behind my sister's attitude. In my room, I cried for a while and eventually fell asleep from exhaustion. The next morning, when I went to the living room, my sister had prepared breakfast. Ah, good morning, sis. Despite what she had said the day before, she acted as if nothing had happened. After all, it was only the day after yesterday's incident. Naturally, I was still angry with her. Nevertheless, it was a breakfast she had taken the trouble to prepare. Feeling it would be rude to leave it uneaten, I sat down and began to eat the breakfast. Sally Newfield, 42 years old. Her husband is a doctor, and they have a son in high school. She met John, a salesman, during a home renovation consultation and started an affair with him soon after.
What? What are you trying to say?
My sister started reading out information about John's mistress. I couldn't believe she was trying to hurt me even more. Feeling sick, I got up to leave the table without finishing my breakfast.
Sis, it's really a good thing. You can break up with that cheating jerk sooner. What do you know?
I shouted, angered by her words. Then, with a sly smile, she said, Hey!
Don't you want to get back at that woman? And John too? Of course, I'd love to get back at them. But how? Well, that's Sally. She's actually my boyfriend's older sister. Wait, Finn's sister?
I was utterly shocked. I never imagined that my husband would be having an affair with my sister's boyfriend's sister. After graduating from vocational school, my sister got a job at a production company. She was working as a stylist, and she met Finn, a TV director, there, and they were in a serious relationship, considering marriage. But Finn's sister, Sally, John's mistress, strongly opposed their marriage, saying, "Don't marry someone who can only earn money through physical labor." Finn and his sister, who is a decade older than him, have a close bond. She doted on him since his birth, and he admires her greatly. Apparently, the sister is somewhat strong-willed, and Finn seems to be quite submissive towards her. Sally is a bit strong-willed, and Finn, unable to defy her, doesn't want to marry forcefully, hoping for her blessing instead. My sister seemed a bit irritated by Finn's attitude towards his sister. It really irks me, that woman. I can't forgive her either. Hey, sis, please, let's get back at her together. I had no idea my sister was in such a situation. That's why she said congratulations to me.
I asked you before, but how are we going to get back at them?
I've already planted the seeds. Now, we just have to wait. From that day on, we enjoyed our sisterly life, shopping and dining out, having a great time. I kept ignoring John's messages, asking me to come back, and never answered his calls. Despite receiving numerous messages from my husband pleading, "Please come back home soon," I naturally ignored them all. I never answered any of his phone calls either. 2 weeks later, just as I was beginning to forget about John, I was relaxing at home watching TV. Then the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Who could it be? I thought it must be a delivery since my sister usually just comes in. I went to the door and opened it.
Please! I beg you, forgive me. Let's start over.
It was John, crying and kneeling, pleading with me. I was startled by his sudden visit but quickly said to him, "There's no way we can start over. It's impossible. Go home.
Please, I really regret what I did."
No matter how much I told him to leave, he wouldn't budge. Just then, my sister, who had been out, came back. "What? The jerk is here? What's he doing?" John, seemingly thinking my sister didn't know about his affair, mumbled something incoherently. Seeing this, my sister, unable to stand it anymore, said to John, "You seek healing from my sister and excitement from your mistress, right? That's laughable. Do you really think such a stupid reason will make everything okay? Just so you know, your mistress, the one you cheated with, is crying her eyes out because her husband is divorcing her. And she's making excuses, saying she couldn't refuse you because you forced her into the relationship."
How do you know that?
Finn. Ring a bell?
No. I don't know.
That's my boyfriend's name. His sister, Sally, is your mistress. John was stunned by the revelation from my sister. He never thought his affair would leak through his sister-in-law's boyfriend. So, that's what it is. I couldn't believe it when I heard it. But it's true. So, what do you want coming here? I have no business with you, so I'd like you to leave quickly. Well, you see, Sally's husband called the office saying, "Your employee is having an affair with my wife. Depending on how things go, I might sue." It was immediately discovered that I was the one having an affair. Now, I'm on house arrest, not knowing what to do. How foolish can one be? Such a childish and irresponsible reason to try and reconcile with me. It doesn't seem like John is genuinely remorseful. He's just cornered and looking for someone to lean on. I went inside, got a piece of paper, and handed it to John. "Can you sign this?" It was a divorce paper.
This is a joke, right? I'm not signing.
What are you saying now? If you won't sign, then leave.
I won't move from here until I can go back with Natalie.
John stubbornly refused to sign the divorce papers and stayed put. Frustrated and at a loss, when I threatened to call the police, he finally left for the day. Since then, John came to my parents' house every day, begging for forgiveness. Initially, he was apologetic, but gradually his tone changed to, "Are you really okay with divorcing me, and don't you want kids? It'll be tough at 32 to start over." Trying everything to win me back. Eventually, I was mentally exhausted. Finally, with the help of a lawyer and my parents, I managed to get him to sign the divorce papers. Now, our marital relationship was officially over.
Do you understand why I said congratulations?
Yes. I finally understand.
Thanks to his insane affair, I saw John's true colors.
Thank you. It was entirely John's own doing. I'm glad I realized it soon. He can rot in hell with his mistress for all I care. I thought this, laughing about it with my sister in the living room. A month later, John's alimony of $40,000 was deposited into my account. I also received this message from him. "That's the end of the alimony. I really regret what I did to Natalie. Now, I'm being sued for alimony by the mistress's husband. It's pretty tough. I asked my family for help, but no one will talk to me. Well, it's what I deserve. I've been demoted at work, doing physical labor at a subsidiary company, and I've broken down. Spending my days alone in the hospital. Take care, and be well." It's such a fall from grace to be shunned by his own family and not even have visitors while in the hospital, considering how close they used to be. Well, it's a natural consequence. As for John's mistress, according to what my sister heard from her boyfriend, she was kicked out of her house. She tried to return to her parents, but they too turned her away. She even attempted to move into Finn's apartment, but he refused her, so now she's working in a low-end bar and living in a cheap apartment. Both of them are thoroughly walking down a path of downfall, which brings me some closure. A year later, I remarried Sam, who had informed me about John's affair. He had been concerned about me ever since and kept in touch frequently. Who would have thought I'd end up marrying Ms. Natalie? Honestly, I've always been interested in her, and I was shocked when I found out she married John, haha. Life is so unpredictable. Sam still calls me a Miss Natalie, even now. I find that trait of his, still addressing me with Miss, quite charming and endearing. There's now a new life growing inside me. We're looking forward to building a happy family together, just the three of us. Look, do you really think I've fallen seriously in love with you? What? It dawned on me that Mike never truly loved me, and I felt dizzy. He continued to berate me. "I'm busy with work every day. I just wanted a wife to take care of the house. And now you go and get sick, hospitalized with a heart condition. I don't want to be married to a sick old lady." I felt my world go even darker, but then I remembered something I saw earlier. With that, I knew I had nothing to fear. I had a strong ally, and losing Mike didn't seem like a loss at all. Fine. I had a strong ally, and losing Mike didn't seem like a loss at all. But I planned to give Mike, who had used me and rekindled a romance with his ex-girlfriend while I was hospitalized, a taste of his own medicine. I'm Kelly. I'm a 45-year-old housewife who recently got married. Until my mid-40s, my life was a simple routine of work and home. My pleasures were occasional drinking, shopping, and buying lottery tickets as a yearly ritual, hoping for happiness someday. That's when I came across a dating app for people in their 40s. I'd been to matchmaking parties before but never found the right match. I started the app casually, never imagining it would lead me to my husband. He is 3 years older than me, Mike Manson. He is a director in a company with over 1,000 employees, earning around $200,000 a year. He seemed dedicated and hardworking. Curious why such a good man was still single, I casually asked him on our first date. He shyly smiled. "Well, I've been too busy with work to find the right opportunity." Indeed, managing a large team is demanding. But Mike, feeling lonely, had started using the dating app. His shy response made him shine brightly in my eyes. Gradually, I was drawn to Mike. And he seemed to like me too. He said, "Actually, I've never thought there were any good meeting, but I'm glad to meet the women like you, Kelly." "Me too, I was just thinking to give up to meet someone. I also have never thought I could meet the good man like you, in this app." We both felt it was a miraculous meeting and smiled at each other. It didn't take long for us to consider marriage. We married within 6 months of meeting. The day before I got married, I bought my last bachelor lottery ticket, thinking this could be my last. Right after our wedding, Mike made a request. "I'm swamped with work, so splitting house chores isn't gonna work for me. I want you, Kelly, to quit your job and stay home." "What?" "Well, my mom was a housewife, so focusing on household duties isn't a big deal for me." I agreed to Mike's request and decided to quit my job after getting married. Then came the joyful days of our newlywed life. Mike seemed so happy eating the meals I cooked, saying they were delicious. It was a joy I hadn't felt during my lonely, single days. However, this happiness was short-lived, something I couldn't have imagined at the time. Within a month of marriage, Mike's attitude changed drastically. At first, even if he worked late, he would come straight home. But recently, it's not uncommon for him to come home in the middle of the night. Even when I waited with dinner ready, he'd come home and say, "I already ate. Don't need it." I wished he had told me earlier, as I struggled to hold back my hurt feelings while cleaning up the uneaten food. You made fish, my least favorite, after I come home tired? I can't eat this poor thing. Make something with meat. But there's no meat today, so can you make do with this? I'll make a meat dish tomorrow. If there's none, go buy some. I want meat, so make it now. Despite it being past 9 p.m., he sent me to the supermarket just before closing to buy meat. Mike's arrogance wasn't limited to meals. Even with my careful cleaning, he always found something to complain about. Tall Mike would run his finger over high places like the top of a tall cabinet and yell, "Here. There's still dust here." As a short person, I couldn't reach those spots without a stool. It felt like harassment the way he pointed them out. "I can't reach such high places often, I'll do it during a year-end cleaning day. Don't point it out every day." Even when I said that, Mike would reply with a look of disgust. "Until the year-end cleaning day, you'll just let dust accumulate up there? Short people really are useless." I was hurt by his belittling of my height, but I couldn't retort, fearing what he might say next. So, I endured silently, no matter what he said. Taking advantage of this, Mike criticized everything I did around the house. He just lay there, saying he was tired. Initially, I thought he was a kind man, but his true colors showed more each day. Still, I told myself, this is what marriage is like, and endured, having finally married at this age. Lately, though, I've been feeling strange palpitations and pain in my chest. What's this? Well, it'll probably pass soon. I was concerned about this discomfort but neglected it, which might have been a mistake. My condition worsened, leading to severe breathlessness and dizziness. Unable to bear it anymore, I decided to get a checkup at the hospital. The symptoms were from a heart disease caused by stress. The daily mental strain was taking a heavy toll on my body. I had to be hospitalized for a while. When I went home to prepare for my stay, I informed Mike, but instead of concern, he frowned and said, "What? You're gonna be in the hospital for a long time? Who's gonna take care of the house? Who will do the chores? I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but while I'm in the hospital, please manage with takeout or ready-made meals. There's a dryer for laundry, and the house won't get that dirty with just one person." Hey, are you telling me to do all the housework? That's impossible with my busy schedule. I'm sorry, but you'll just have to bear with it until I get discharged. I begged desperately, but Mike remained sullen. Unbelievable, you can't even do housework properly, and now you're going to the hospital. You're really useless. Remember this when you get back. As I faced Mike's harsh words, I started preparing for the hospital alone. Feeling guilty as if I were running away from the situation. Even though it wasn't my fault. The next morning, Mike was still in a bad mood and didn't even see me off to the hospital, leaving early for work. I had no choice but to go to the hospital alone, carrying my bags. During my stay, Mike never visited. I had suspected this might happen and brought everything I needed, including a change of clothes. Still, the hospital room felt incredibly lonely without any visitors. To distract myself from the boredom, I surfed the internet on my phone. One day, I received a strange message notification in my messaging app. It was from Mike, but the content left me stunned. "Julie, I love you. I'll be done with work soon, wait for me." I was about to mark it as read when it suddenly showed, "Message deleted." Who was Julie? And why such a gentle message, unlike any he sent to me? Could it be that Mike was cheating? As this worrying thought crossed my mind, my chest began to hurt again. I quickly pressed the nurse call button. Fortunately, it was a minor attack, and following the nurse's instructions, the pain subsided in about 5 minutes. The nurse advised, "Stress is bad for you. Try to think of something pleasant," but what could I possibly think about? Then I remembered the lottery ticket I had bought before our marriage. The drawing was yesterday. As a distraction, I checked the lottery numbers on the official website on my phone. To my amazement, the words "Congratulations on your win" displayed on my account page left me almost speechless.
Wow, no way! Can't believe it!
I was counting the digits of the amount I had won, still in shock. Then, the door to my hospital room opened, and Mike walked in. Behind him was a woman in her early 30s, someone I didn't recognize. She was like a flashy-looking. "Hey, you holding up okay?" Mike asked me casually. "How can I be okay? I'm hospitalized. And you haven't even shown your face here until now." "Well, of course. Who do you think has been busy because of you? Between work and house chores, I've had a rough time." As usual, Mike was only concerned about his own busyness, indifferent to my condition. I replied with a forced smile. "Oh, I see. Sorry for the trouble." Unfazed by my displeased demeanor, Mike grinned back.
"Kelly, you really lack charm. But it's fine now. You don't have to worry about any inconveniences anymore. You can stay in the hospital as long as you need."
"What do you mean by that?" His words filled me with anxiety. Then Mike put his arm around the woman's shoulder and said proudly, "Now, she's taking care of things for me. Right, Julie?" Julie was the name in the message earlier. She smiled coyly, snuggling up to Mike. "Who is she?" "That woman?"
Heh, surprised, aren't you? Since you're useless, I reached out to Julie, my ex. She still loves me and came running to help."
Proudly, Mike boasted. I tried to remain calm and asked, "Oh, an old acquaintance came to help out? Sorry for the trouble. I still need to stay in the hospital for a while." Mike and Julie burst into laughter. "Funny. This wife of yours is a bit off, huh? She doesn't get it. Well, can't help it. She never had a boyfriend until her mid-40s." They looked at me with utter disdain. Of course, I knew. I could tell they were having an affair. I wanted to say it, but getting upset would only strain my heart. So, I stayed calm, but Mike said something outrageous. "Anyway, I don't need a weak, older woman anymore. From now on, I'll be with Julie all the time." While saying this, Mike thrust a piece of paper with green writing at me. It meant he wanted a divorce. Even though I had been trying to stay calm, I couldn't hide my agitation. "Why? You broke up with her once, right? You chose to be with me, and now you want to get back together with your ex?" When I asked this, Mike responded with a look of disdain.
"Do you really think I ever seriously fell in love with you?"
"What?" I felt like I was being hit with the reality that Mike never truly loved me, and my head started spinning. Mike continued his tirade.
"That's why. I'm busy with work every day. I just wanted a wife to take care of the house. And then you go and get hospitalized with a heart condition. I'm divorcing a sick old woman.
My world grew even darker, but then I remembered something I had seen earlier. If I had that, I wouldn't need to fear anything. With this thought, I regained my composure and replied to Mike. Fine. Mike was taken aback by my unexpected reaction. Huh? You're really okay with it? You know you have nowhere to go without me, don't act tough. I'm not acting tough. Just make sure to file this divorce paper, okay? I signed the divorce paper and handed it back to Mike. Yeah, I'll take care of it. I'll file it tomorrow or something. Mike said this but still looked puzzled. Julie was staring at me with a smug smile.
You must have realized you can't compete with my youth and beauty, even if you're struggling financially.
Yeah, that's right. I'm proud to have Julie, the number one at the club, all to myself. Even when we dated before, I thought she'd leave me for a younger man.
No matter how popular I was at the club, I always only had eyes for Mike. Once the divorce is filed, we can immediately submit our marriage papers.
Club? Number one? I was startled, and Mike quickly covered her mouth. I had thought he was working hard, but he had been frequenting that kind of place. Now that I think about it, even after we got married, there were nights he came home late, claiming he was out drinking after overtime. His late returns claiming he had already eaten seemed suspicious. Seeing the doubt on my face, Julie exclaimed,
"Who cares? Anyway, Mike and I are getting together now, so you're no longer needed, old lady."
With that, Julie grabbed Mike's arm and they left the room. While I was going through a difficult hospital stay, Mike decided to remarry his affair partner. I couldn't forgive Mike. Parting with him only brought relief, though. Before that, I decided to give Mike a taste of his own medicine and planned my revenge. After resting in the hospital room and successfully recovering, I finally got permission to be discharged. Since Mike remarried and moved to Julie's apartment, I was left to live alone in our former residence. Immediately after returning home, I went to the designated bank to cash in the winning lottery ticket. Given the amount, it would take about a week to receive the funds. During that time, I searched online for a good lawyer to investigate Mike's past relationships. Was he really done with Julie before marrying me? If their relationship had continued, I could claim alimony. Once the lottery winnings were secured, I found a lawyer and requested an investigation. As it turned out, Mike had indeed continued his relationship with Julie. Julie, a former club hostess, was as popular as Mike had claimed. They had been together since then, never actually breaking up. Essentially, Mike married me while maintaining his relationship with her, treating me more like a housekeeper. This realization made my blood boil. However, to avoid worsening my health, I needed to stay calm. I wanted to confront Mike and demand alimony right away, but I decided to leave everything to my lawyer and wait for the right time. Soon, Mike called me.
"Hey! Why did a lawyer suddenly show up demanding alimony for adultery? What's this all about?"
Just as the lawyer said. "Pay up quickly, or I'm fine with taking this to court."
Shut up. First of all, where did you get the money to hire a lawyer? Court cases cost money too. You must have spent a fortune on hospital bills.
Mike, unaware of my financial situation, tried to use it against me. But he didn't realize his careless words had backfired. Right. Despite being married, you didn't contribute to my hospital expenses. The lawyer said I could claim that from you too. Mike's careless words turned the situation in my favor. Realizing his mistake, he didn't say anything more. I could hear a woman's voice in the background, "Give me your phone." Probably Julie eavesdropping.
How dare you demand alimony? You broke down your own body and neglected your husband. I was the one who took care of him in your place. Aha, that's right.
Mike chimed in, encouraged by having Julie on his side. But I remained calm and responded. "Didn't the lawyer tell you? We've already investigated your ongoing affair with Julie even after our marriage. I hired a competent lawyer, so there's no escape for you.
Stop bluffing. You keep saying this, but you don't have the money.
Oh, that's right. Despite his high income, you only gave me $2,400 a month for living expenses. I had to manage rent, high heating bills, and groceries with just that. Could that also contribute to the alimony claim? Indeed, Mike's treatment towards me had been terrible in every aspect. No matter what he said now, it would only dig his own grave. If this went to court, it's clear that I'd have the upper hand. Especially with my meticulously kept household budget app as evidence. Mike still thought I was just bluffing.
A competent lawyer, really? That lawyer must be nothing special. I won't be fooled.
So, I sent Mike the website link of the law firm I found online. I hired this law firm. You've got their business card, right? The website featured the photo of the lawyer I was working with. Seeing that page, Mike must have been astounded. This is a pretty famous law firm, isn't it? Where did you get the money to hire them? Mike sounded panicked, so it seemed like the right time to reveal the truth.
Actually, I won this year's lottery, totaling up to $1 billion with the before and after prizes.
What? Mike and Julie seemed shocked by my revelation.
No way. I never heard about you buying lottery tickets.
I bought them with my own money before we got married. I didn't need to report every little thing to you, did I? There was silence for a while. Then, Mike sounded panicked.
You're home, right? I'm coming over now.
What could Mike possibly want now, coming over all of a sudden? About 20 minutes later, Mike arrived at my house alone. Surprisingly with a cheerful expression. Kelly, I came to discuss property division. Property division? I was dumbfounded by Mike's audacity, showing up like this and making such an absurd request. Well, yeah. The lottery ticket was bought before our marriage, but you cashed it in after we got married. Doesn't that mean I'm entitled to half as shared marital property? Sorry, but that's not going to work. I cashed it in after our divorce was finalized. Besides, the divorce was due to your affair.
Come on, don't say that. We were once married, so give me at least a quarter.
Mike pleaded, hands clasped together. I flatly rejected him, saying only what's convenient for himself. No way.
I'm not just talking about property division here. I need to get the alimony from you.
Oh, about that. Mike seemed desperate, trying to come up with something that would work in his favor. Listen, I was actually deceived by that woman. She was just dazzled by my job and came after me. Being a night worker, she must have other clients and, other guys she's dating. So what? What are you trying to say? Basically, I'm a victim here, not someone who cheated. Of course, I'll break up with her and never cheat again. So, can we start over? I was dumbfounded by his audacity.
You really think that lame excuse is going to fly? There's no doubt you cheated. Look, here's all the evidence.
I said this and spread out the photos the lawyer had collected as evidence of Mike's affair. The photos showed Mike with his arm around Julie, entering and exiting a hotel, and in compromising situations in a park. All clear evidence of his infidelity.
Damn it! Gathering all this against me.
Mike picked up the photos, clearly upset. Then Julie appeared. She had apparently followed Mike but stayed hidden to observe.
Hey! Mike, what do you mean I deceived you? Don't make things up. You were the one crying and begging me to take you back.
Julie, you heard that? Mike was clearly at a loss for words. Julie, having heard everything, was furious.
Don't look down on me because I used to work in a club. I've always loved you, even after we broke up. How are you going to make up for these feelings?
Oh, sorry. Mike was completely overwhelmed by the two women. I was so happy when you came back to me, but you trampled on my feelings. I'll be demanding alimony from you too.
Hey, why do I have to pay alimony to my affair partner? Affair partner? We were legally married, even if it was just for a month. It was an affair originally, wasn't it?
Seeing Mike's distressed face, I couldn't help but feel like laughing. Mike, women's hearts aren't that easy to win over. Mike seemed utterly defeated by my words. It looked like the situation was settled, so I decided to call in one more person who had been listening in the shadows. It's time for you to come out. What? There's someone else here? At my cue, a person waiting in the next room came in. Hello, I've heard everything.
It's you, the lawyer from that time.
Yes, this was the lawyer who had told me, please contact me anytime you need. So when Mike said he was coming over, I immediately informed the lawyer. He had entered my house quietly through the back door and waited in the next room. Mike, as Kelly told you, you have no right to the property division. And regarding the alimony, considering Ms. Julie's involvement, we'll review that too. After the lawyer spoke, Mike stood there with his mouth agape, in a state of shock. This resolved everything, and I felt a huge relief. Later, I received alimony from Mike and settled the property division by splitting his earnings during our marriage. Mike divorced Julie and now lives alone. His company, a strict major corporation, got wind of his affairs and successive divorces, leading to his dismissal. Apparently, his flashy relationships had already put him on his boss's radar. So the divorce news spread quickly. I haven't seen Mike since then, but there was a person who informed me about all this. It was Julie, his affair partner. She came to my house to apologize, showing remorse for her actions.
I'm sorry. I'll pay back the alimony gradually with my earnings. Please wait for it.
Julie apologized deeply. However, I refused the alimony from Julie. As it turned out, Julie hadn't had a stable job since leaving the club scene. Initially managing with her savings, her extravagant lifestyle soon depleted her funds. Therefore, she clung to Mike for financial support.
I really did love Mike. I know this is just an excuse to say this, but
she said with sincerity in her eyes. That's why I decided to let things go easily with Julie. Mike, having lost his job and struggling with alimony payments, was evicted from his apartment due to unpaid rent. Then he came to me with a sullen look in his eyes.
Kelly, I was really wrong. Please forgive me just this once. I'll do anything you say, just let me stay here. I won't ask for money, just let me stay.
He begged with a pitiful voice. I casually replied. Fine. Stay here as long as you like.
Really? Oh, thank you.
I let Mike into the house. But that night, while he was asleep, I packed my things. I had already arranged a new place to move into recently. By dawn, when Mike woke up, the moving truck had arrived. What's going on? Where are you going with all this stuff? Oh, I'm moving out today. You know this house is rented, right? You'll have to pay the rent yourself now. It's $2,000 a month.
What? I can't afford that now. You tricked me.
I haven't tricked you. I just said you could stay here. Good luck with the rent. Bye. Leaving those words behind, I left the house. Since then, I've canceled my cell phone and made it impossible for Mike to ever contact me again. Of course, I haven't given him my new address either. Sometime later, I bumped into the landlord of the house where Mike and I used to live together. When I asked how Mike was doing, it turned out he had left because he couldn't pay the rent. No one knows where he went. Well, I've left Mike to his own devices and am now living a luxurious life in my dream high-rise apartment. The urban landscape is visible from my window, offering the perfect location. Since parting ways with Mike, my health has completely recovered, thanks to the absence of stress. The fitness room on the first floor of the high-rise allows me to exercise every day. Plus, since pets are allowed, I've started keeping a Pomeranian, which I've always loved. Her name is Mocha, and she's now my precious family member. Despite winning $1 billion in the lottery, I can't just spend my days in leisure. I've always enjoyed working, so I decided to get rehired at the company I worked for before getting married. Coincidentally, I saw a mid-career recruitment advertisement on a job site the day I moved. When I inquired, it turned out they had been struggling to find good talent after my departure. When I requested to be re-employed, my former boss was thrilled. Now, I've got a comfortable living space and a familiar work environment, achieving my ideal lifestyle. While I might not have been blessed with a happy marriage, I'm now fully enjoying life in my own way.
This is, after all, the greatest happiness for me now.